Good morning everybody, welcome to Beepannock Farm. Welcome to a glorious sunny Sunday morning, and we're down at one of our other sites dealing with some other sheep this morning, and I've come in on my own to catch them because although there's a mob of us in the truck, if they see everybody they will suspect that something is the matter. So I've come in to catch them and pop them in this shed so that we can handle them without too much of a bother. So this is an absolute record. I've injured myself within less than 5 minutes of being here. They didn't want to come in, and a big fat splinter has sliced right into my skin. So later on I'm going to have the joy of cleaning out what's quite a nasty cut and digging the splinter out, which is really rubbish. But I have managed to catch them all, including the two that didn't want to come in, which are the older ones. So they obviously really suspect that I'm going to do something very nasty to them, when in fact I'm going to do something really nice and really important. So we've caught the first one. This is one of last year's ewe lambs, so she's a big lamb basically now, and they're kind of all in need of a major beard trim. So they've got this wool that's grown really thick around their chins and their faces, and they'll be making them a bit wool blind as well, so it'll be obscuring their view of life and making them too hot, and also just making them look a terrible mess in general. That's one of the issues. One of the far more serious issues is this, which is basically weeks and weeks worth of feces just attached to their wool and hanging on, which will be heavy and uncomfortable and will be a breeding ground for flies that'll just attract lots of pests. So we're going to clip all of that off on all of these and put a bit of chemical on just to deter the flies from going there in the first place. We also use the opportunity to check their feet, make sure that their feet are all okay and that there's nothing wrong with their teeth. So it's just a good opportunity to give them all a check over. This is the trusty trimming stand that you guys have seen before, homemade by Joe. It's absolutely fantastic device. This job would take twice as long without it, but it's just important to trim their face before we clip them into the stand, because as you can see, the way that the stand works around the facial area, you couldn't really get to them. So, oh hello Cupid, you're kind of coming out from your wool now, we can see what you look like. And here's the trimmers ready to go. So we'll get her fastened into the stand and then on to the next bit. So there we go. Cupid's a bit bald round her bottom, but she looks so much better. We seem to have a dinosaur in the background, but we'll try not to worry about that just too much right now. I thought I'd film my face as well. I mean, it's not the most show-worthy haircut, we'll be frank, but it's functional, isn't it? You can see, and we can see you. All is much better. Oh, the dinosaur's back. It's another example of how children are not always helpful when you're trying to do jobs around your animals. So now I've got Cupid wandering around in the background, who's finished her beauty treatment, and Joe's working on Corrie. Corrie is a much bigger sheep. She's the same age as Cupid, but she's just really huge. Some of that's genetics and some of it's that she's just grown on really well. So Joe's just dealing with a lion's mane. It'll be a bit of a crude haircut again, but it's functional. It'll allow her to see. And if we just look at her back end as well, completely different, so really clean. This one should be much quicker and easier to do than the last one, and that's a good sign. So if I just elaborate on that, when we're retaining animals into our flock or selling them on to other people to breed with, we want to make sure that we're keeping the very best animals or letting other people have the very best animals. So we're looking for things that don't have a worm burden, don't have any digestive issues. These have been wormed recently, so really they shouldn't have a runny bottom, but we have had a flush of grass here and that can cause that issue. But it's always good to see a clean back end on an animal, because it's a really good sign. So she has a nice face, she's got great feet, she's very well put together, she's grown really well, and also she's got a clean bum, which, to be honest, if you're trying to sell an animal, nobody's going to want to buy an animal with a dirty backside, but I'm fairly confident that I actually want to keep this one in our flock if we can. I would just like to say there is a slight downside to Corrie in that she is a bit feisty, so she's bouncing around in the stand, something chronic, and Oliver's having to help hold her in, so she's not the easiest young ewe to handle. So that's the downside, but we can work with that, that'll be fine. So there are two chemicals that we use here. One is Click and one is Crowvect. This is Crowvac that we've just put on as a prevention to try and keep the flies away from the back end. Now we've trimmed it off. After she's been sheared fully and had all of her fleece off, she'll get her treatment with click instead. So this is actually Corey's mum, Zita. She shouldn't be here this year, but she is. So Zita should have lambs, so she should actually be over at the house with lambs at Fort. However, sadly, she aborted her lambs. We know that she was pregnant. We know that she was pregnant with twins because that's what she was scanned for. But unfortunately, that's just not what happened for her this year. So out of kindness, really, the ones that things have not worked out for with their lambs have come over to be with last year's ewe lambs. So this is kind of just like a bit of a resting space, I guess, and it's probably the best environment for Zita. And just the best place for her to be. There's a bit less work to do because she was already trimmed up ready for lambing, which obviously hasn't happened for her, but it does make working on this ewe a little bit quicker. Again, this is one of the young ewes, so one of last year's ewe lambs. And I just thought I'd show how different she is to the other two that we saw at the beginning of the video. She's much smaller, but she's still got a nice face. She was born a little bit later, so she's at a slight disadvantage, but she hasn't grown on quite as well, but she's quite well put together. She is genuinely a smaller animal. She might just going to be a smaller ewe herself, but I just thought it'd be interesting to show you guys. She's got a lovely clean bottom, and like I say, seems quite well put together. She's just a smaller animal. So this is Beauty. She was the only true empty from this year. So that's a ewe that was supposed to be pregnant and wasn't. And it would have been her first year. Now in a commercial flock, that would probably have meant a death sentence for this ewe. But we might be going to be a bit more lenient with things. She's very nice to look at and has the traits that we would look for in the breed. So just talk about Beauty's issues in a bit more detail. One of the reasons why I think, Oliver's waving in the background, one of the reasons I think she was empty is because she got strike on her back end. She got it twice last summer. The first time, bad coincidence. The second time, I think was actually us. I don't think we got the chemical on her quick enough. And it was while she was in with the tup, and I think it has had a bearing on pregnancies not developing, not holding, or maybe just the tup not going anywhere near her. Either way, I do feel that we've got a responsibility to sort her issues out, so I think we'll let her run on another year. And out of all of the sheep, it's incredibly important that she gets the chemical on, because we know that she's had an issue. And it's weird actually, but the flies do seem to favour some of the sheep more than others. Sometimes it'll be the way that they're put together at the back end. Sometimes it'll be that there's been a bit of a weakness in them, so they might have had a medical issue elsewhere. Those that are always wet on the back end, those that are always pooey around the back end. But there are some that the flies just seem to like for no actual apparent reason. And unfortunately, she does have that. That sometimes corrects itself after their first year lambing. So I'm just really hopeful we can get her sorted out. She's very well put together, a nice little ewe. Also, this is why to keep your eye on your child while you're trying to do a job with your sheep. So Henry's keeping himself occupied by using the rope that was attaching the trimming stand to tie many times around the trailer and the back end of the truck. So we're going to need to unknot that, but at the moment he's occupied. Let's just talk about this. This is a vitamin and mineral drench. It tells us on the side what's in it. We do know that we have issues at this field, in particular that it's deficient, and the selenium and the cobalt are the main things that sheep can become deficient in, but there are other elements. They can become deficient in copper, but they can also become poisoned and overdosed by it. That's sheep for you. But we've kind of got into a pattern of treating the animals that are over in these fields at least once a month with this drench. So there we go, they're all done for the day. Beauty's come to eat my hair. This has happened before. I'm fairly used to it now. I think we've definitely bought them the weeks between now and when they're actually going to get their proper shear. So we've dealt with the dirty back ends, and we've also made sure that they've got some chemical on them. They've all had their feet checked, and I've been able to have an overall look at the quality of what is in effect last year's ewe lambs, and I'm generally quite pleased. There's a couple that aren't brilliant, but by and large I'm pleased and I'm happy with them. And the main thing is that everything looks healthy, so that's good. And we're away next week for a week, so we've made sure that the people that are left in charge of our stock while we're not here shouldn't be harassed by too many issues. So there we go, that's another Sunday taken up with a little bit of sheep activity. I hope you've enjoyed watching this video. If you could give us a like, that'd be fantastic. If you could give us a subscribe, that'd be even better. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all again very soon in the next few days, when we'll be talking about doing a similar activity with the ewes. Bye for now.